My mother-in-law thought she was being sneaky when she slipped something into my drink. "Special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law," she said with a wide smile, handing me the glass. I thanked her politely, but when her back was turned, I switched it with her husband's drink instead. Frank, my father-in-law, the man who never missed a chance to knock what I do for a living. 45 minutes later, well, he was not feeling too good. "My name is Luke Foster. I am 36 years old, and I make my living as an independent photographer out of Asheville, North Carolina. I built my career from scratch, covering everything from weddings to wildlife to magazine spreads. The kind of work that keeps the lights on if you are good enough. And I am. But in my in-laws' eyes, especially Diane's, it was never enough. "How is that little photography hobby going?" Frank would ask every Sunday dinner, not bothering to hide the smirk in his voice. He was an investment banker, the type of guy who judged a man's worth by the size of his paycheck and the make of his car. Sunday dinners at their house had become a regular tradition. Diane would fuss over her daughter, my wife Emily, while Frank grilled me about my finances. Emily would squeeze my hand under the table, her way of apologizing without making a scene. I had just gotten back from Montana that week, where I spent days in freezing snow capturing images of bison for a National Geographic assignment. I was beat to the bone, but Emily insisted we show up for her mother's birthday dinner. "Just a couple of hours," she promised. I should have listened to that uneasy feeling in my gut when Diane cornered me in the kitchen. The way her eyes darted around before handing me that drink. The slight shake in her hand when she said, "I made it just for you." Something was off. I just had no idea how bad it was about to get. Emily and I met 6 years back at an art exhibit where my work was being shown. She was finishing her master's in environmental science, and I was just starting to gain a little attention in the photography world. We clicked instantly. She understood my need to capture the world through a lens, and I admired her passion for protecting it. Her parents, though, they were a different story from the start. The first time I met Frank, he made it crystal clear he had hoped for someone else to marry his daughter. Someone with a regular office job, a retirement plan, and a corner office somewhere. Someone like him. Diane was a little more subtle. She would compliment my photos, but always follow it with questions about when I was going to find a real job. Whenever she introduced me at family events, she would say, "This is Luke, the photographer," instead of "my son-in-law." For years, I tried. Brought expensive bottles of wine to dinners. Showed them articles where my work had been published. Mentioned my biggest clients. Nothing changed. In their minds, I was just a phase Emily was going through. Something she would eventually outgrow. Last Christmas, I overheard Diane on the phone, telling someone, Emily could have married Tyler. You know, orthopedic surgeon, family money. But she chose the creative one. The way she said creative made it sound like a disease. Frank was even worse. When Emily and I told the family we were trying to start a family, he pulled me aside and said, "Kids are expensive, son. Maybe you should think about getting real employment first." I never told Emily any of it. She loved her parents despite their flaws, and I was not about to put her in the middle. So I played the game, smiled, shook Frank's hand, complimented Diane's cooking, and kept my mouth shut. But there were signs I should have paid closer attention to. The way Diane would call Emily into the kitchen whenever I talked about landing a big job. How she would accidentally crop me out of family photos. The time Frank suggested Emily should consider therapy for her impulsive decisions, while staring straight at me. I let it all slide, hoping they would eventually come around. They did not. That Friday, the day of Diane's birthday dinner, I rolled into town with windburned cheeks and a camera full of shots that would cover our mortgage for 3 months. I was dead tired but still cleaned up, put on a nice shirt, and drove us out to their fancy colonial-style house on the other side of town. Dinner started the same as always. Frank bragging about his latest deal. Diane fussing over the table. Emily's brother, Aaron, and his wife, Melissa, making polite small talk. I sat there nursing a beer, counting down the minutes until we could leave. After dinner, Diane announced she had made her famous sangria for dessert. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I followed, offering to help carry glasses. That is when I saw it. 2 glasses set apart from the others. And Diane, quickly adding something into one of them from a tiny vial she pulled from her pocket. Whatever it was clear, no color, no smell, and she tucked the vial away the second she heard my footsteps. "Oh, Luke, you do not have to help," she said too cheerfully. "This one is special, just for you." My throat went dry. The glass she handed me had a slight shimmer floating on top when it caught the light. "Let me help carry these," I said, grabbing both glasses before she could argue. Back in the dining room, Frank was sitting there checking his phone, not paying attention. I set the tampered glass down in front of him and took a seat across the table, making some excuse about drinking water instead. 45 minutes later, Frank was pale, sweating, and bolting for the bathroom. The sounds that followed were enough to make everyone lose their appetite. Diane went ghost white. Her eyes met mine across the table, and right then, we both knew the truth. She had tried to poison me, and now she realized I knew it. I did not react. I did not accuse her. I just calmly ate my slice of chocolate cake, while Emily hurried off to check on her father. In the chaos that followed, Frank claiming it must have been bad seafood, Diane fumbling for excuses, I quietly slipped the untouched glass into my jacket pocket. The one meant for me. Something inside me shifted that night. The anger I felt was not loud or wild. It was cold, controlled. I was not just going to forget this. I knew better than to fight them on their terms. If Diane and Frank wanted a war, I would show them exactly who they really were, but on my own ground. That Monday after the birthday dinner, I took the glass I had pocketed to Jason, a former client of mine who ran a private toxicology lab. "Personal or professional?" he asked as he accepted the sample. "Family matter," I told him. 3 days later, Jason called me. "Luke, there were benzodiazepines in that drink," he said. "Nothing fatal, but enough to knock someone out for hours, maybe mess with their memory. Where exactly did you get this?" I thanked him and asked for a full report in writing. I did not answer his question. That night, I told Emily I needed to skip Sunday family dinners for a while, said I had to focus on an upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed but supportive. I did not tell her about the toxicology results. Not yet. I needed to be sure about everything first. Over the next couple of weeks, I started digging. Turns out, Diane had prescriptions for Xanax from 3 different doctors. She had been doubling and even tripling her dosage for years. I also heard things around town, quiet rumors, strange incidents at neighborhood parties, stories of jewelry going missing at the country club, whispers about Diane's episodes that the family worked hard to sweep under the rug. I collected everything, waiting for the right moment. It came when Emily told me her mother needed some new photos for a social media profile. She specifically asked if you would take them, Emily said, surprised. I agreed. The next Saturday, I showed up at their house alone, camera bag in one hand and a sealed envelope in the other. Diane was already dressed to impress, makeup perfect, a polite smile plastered on her face. Frank was not home. At the office, Diane explained. "Before we get started," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I think you might want to take a look at this." I handed her the envelope, watching as she opened it. Inside were copies of the lab report, her prescription history, and a summary of the neighborhood stories. Her hands shook as she read. "This is ridiculous," she whispered. "I would never." "We both know what happened," I said, cutting her off. "What I do not know is why." Her face changed. The polite mask dropped. "You are not good enough for Emily," she hissed. "You never have been. A real man provides security, not silly pictures. And drugging your daughter's husband, that is your idea of providing security?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "It was not supposed to hurt you," she snapped. "Just make you sick enough to miss that ridiculous gallery show you keep talking about. I wanted Emily to see you for what you are, unreliable." I let her words hang in the air. "Here is what happens now," I said. "You are going to tell Frank exactly what you did. Then you are both going to start treating me with respect, not because you suddenly like me, but because the alternative is Emily learning who you really are." Diane gave a bitter laugh. "She would never believe you over her own family." I picked up my camera bag. "Maybe, but she will believe a certified lab report, and medical records, and the neighbors you have alienated. You willing to bet your relationship with your daughter on that?" I walked out without taking a single photo. Later that night, Diane called Emily sobbing, saying I had been hostile and inappropriate during our photo session. When Emily confronted me, I knew it was time. I showed her everything: the toxicology report, the prescriptions, and even some of the nasty old text messages from her mother. "My mother would never do something like this," Emily said, but her voice was shaky. She was trying to convince herself, not me. The next day, she went to confront her parents. I stayed behind. When she came home, her eyes were red from crying. My dad says it is all a big misunderstanding, she said quietly. He says you were just insecure about your career and trying to drive a wedge between us. I just nodded. I had expected that. What do you think? I asked her. Emily did not answer. She just crawled into bed and turned away from me. For 2 long weeks, she barely spoke to me. She kept visiting her parents alone, coming home with tear-stained cheeks and more doubts in her mind. I buried myself in work, spending long days in my studio, hoping the storm would pass. Then one day, a package arrived. No return address. Just my name written across the top in messy handwriting. Inside was a small USB drive and a handwritten note. You should see this, Vanessa. Vanessa, Emily's brother's wife. I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the files. It was security footage from Frank and Diane's home, time-stamped for the night of the birthday dinner. There was Diane in the kitchen, clearly adding something into a drink. There was me walking in, grabbing the glasses. There was Frank, drinking the tampered glass. But there was more. Footage from later that night. Diane screaming at Frank, furious that he had drunk the wrong glass. Frank yelling back, "This is not the first time you have pulled something like this." I watched the videos 3 times, hardly believing what I was seeing. This was not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. And Frank had known. Another clip, dated 2 days later, showed Diane and Frank arguing again. "He knows what you did," Frank said. "So what?" Diane shot back. "It is his word against ours. Emily will never choose him over her family. And if she does, she is not the daughter I raised." "Do not worry," Diane added. "I have already started planting doubts about their marriage. By the time I am done, she will be filing for divorce and thinking it was her own idea." My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This was never just about me. This was about controlling Emily's entire life. And they had done it before. I called Vanessa right away. "Why did you send this?" I asked. "Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen," she said quietly. "They spent 2 years trying to break us up. Told him I was not good enough. Almost succeeded too." "Why did you never tell us?" I asked. "Owen does not know," she admitted. "He still worships his father. He thinks I am just paranoid. But I could not stand by and watch them do it to you too." The next day, I got a text from Frank. "We should talk. Just the 2 of us. Man to man." We met at his country club. He was sitting in a private room, nursing a bourbon when I arrived. "Luke," he said smoothly, "family relationships are complicated. My wife, she can be difficult sometimes. But she means well." "Drugging me is what you call meaning well?" I asked. He waved his hand like it was nothing. "A misunderstanding. Diane has anxiety, takes medications. Probably got mixed up." "I have the footage, Frank," I said flatly. His expression changed in an instant, the charm sliding off like a mask. "How much do you want?" he asked coldly. "You are after money, right? I always knew you married Emily for financial reasons." "I want you and Diane to leave us alone," I said simply. "Stop trying to ruin my marriage." Frank leaned forward across the table, his voice low and dangerous. "You think this is the first time we have had to deal with someone like you? People who want to claw their way into our family? Haley always comes home. She always chooses us. Ask her about Thomas," he added, smirking. "Her old fiancé. Before you. Nice guy? Doctor. We did not like his background. Took us 6 months, but we got through to her. She broke it off. Came home, crying to Daddy." On the drive back, I called Emily's old college roommate, Bethany. I asked her about Thomas. "Oh, Luke," she said, her voice full of regret. "It was awful. Thomas was perfect for her. Her parents planted fake evidence, made her think he was cheating. He tried to tell her the truth, but she stopped believing him." The truth was clear now. This was not just about me. It had always been about control, complete, suffocating control over Emily's life. And they had done it before. I did not confront Emily yet. Instead, I started gathering every single piece of evidence I could. I spent the next week gathering every bit of evidence I could. I even reached out to Thomas, Emily's old fiancé. At first, he did not want to talk to me. But once I explained what was happening, he opened up. He sent me old emails between him and Emily. Messages showing just how her parents had slowly chipped away at their relationship until it fell apart. I reached out to old friends of Emily's too. People who had mysteriously drifted away over the years. Same story. Anyone who supported Emily's independence had eventually been pushed out of her life. Vanessa helped too. She sent over more security footage, this time showing Diane and Frank sitting around casually planning. Once they are divorced, we will convince her to move back home, Frank said in one clip. She can take over the family foundation. Meet someone more suitable. It was all too clear now. I compiled everything onto a single flash drive. Then I set a plan in motion. I invited Owen and Vanessa over for dinner, without telling Emily what was coming. It was time to tear the mask off once and for all. After dinner, I hooked my laptop up to the television. There is something you both need to see, I said. For the next hour, we watched the footage together. Every ugly minute of it. Emily sat frozen, her face pale. Owen kept shaking his head, muttering, This is not my parents. When it ended, Emily turned to me, her cheeks wet with tears. Why did you not tell me sooner? She asked. Because I needed you to see it with your own eyes, I said quietly. Not just what they did to me, but what they have been doing to you your whole life. Owen stood up, furious. This is fake. You edited this. My parents would never. Vanessa gently touched his arm. They did it to us too, Owen, she said. Why do you think they started being so nice after James was born? Because once we had a child, they had leverage again. The color drained out of Owen's face. You never told me, he whispered. I tried, Vanessa said, her voice cracking. You would not listen. Later that night, Emily crawled into bed beside me. I need time to process all of this, she said softly. But I believe you, and I am sorry I doubted you. The next morning, Diane called. Emily put her on speaker. Sweetheart, Diane said, sounding overly cheerful. Your father and I have been thinking, maybe you should come stay with us for a little while. Sometimes a little separation brings clarity. Emily cut her off. Mom, she said firmly, I have seen the videos. There was a long pause. What videos? Diane asked, voice tight. The ones where you drugged Luke's drink, Emily said, her voice steady. The ones where you and Dad talked about sabotaging our marriage. Another pause. Whatever he showed you has been twisted, Diane said quickly. You know Luke has always been jealous of our family. Stop, Emily said, her voice like steel. We are coming over tonight. All of us. Owen, Vanessa, Luke, and me. We're going to sit down and talk about this. No more lies. After she hung up, Emily turned to me. They will deny everything, she said. They will try to turn it around on you. I nodded. I know. That is why it is time they met the real me. That night, we showed up at Frank and Diane's house, me with my camera gear in tow. Owen and Vanessa were already there, stiff and silent in the living room. Frank was all charm at first. I understand there has been a little misunderstanding, he said smoothly. No misunderstanding, I said, setting up a tripod in the center of the room. I am recording this conversation. Family business. And like it or not, I am family. Diane protested, but I ignored her. I hit record. For the next 2 hours, we laid it all out. The drugging. The lies. The way they destroyed Thomas. The way they pushed friends out of Emily's life. The manipulation that had gone on for decades. Frank and Diane denied everything, of course. Called me unstable. Said I was twisting the truth. But each time they denied, I played another clip. Showed another email. Presented another fact they could not wiggle away from. Their faces grew whiter with every passing minute. Finally, Emily stood up. I love you, she said, voice shaking. But what you have done is unforgivable. You do not control my life anymore. Owen stood beside her. We are adults, he said. We choose our own lives. Diane broke down, sobbing, not out of guilt, but because she realized she had lost control. Frank just sat there, stunned, like he could not believe his children were standing up to him. As we prepared to leave, I handed Frank a flash drive. This has everything, I said. The footage, the emails, the testimonies. It is yours to keep. He looked at me suspiciously. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am not going to ruin you by making this public. Not unless you give me a reason to. I paused. But if you ever interfere with our marriage again, if you ever whisper a single word against me, copies will go to your country club, your business partners, and every one of your fancy friends. For the first time since I had met him, Frank looked at me with something close to respect. I underestimated you, he said. Yes, I replied. You did. 6 months went by. Emily and Owen started therapy, working through the damage their parents had caused. Frank and Diane kept their distance, polite texts now and then, nothing more. Then, over the holidays, they sent out invitations, a fresh start. Emily wanted to go. They are still my parents, she said. And maybe they are trying. I agreed, but I was not about to let my guard down. At dinner, everything seemed fine. Diane cooked a huge meal. Frank actually asked about my latest projects, seemed genuinely interested, even. After dinner, Frank invited me into his study. Poured me a glass of scotch. I have a proposition for you, he said. I have been thinking about your career. Photography has been good to you, but have you thought about expanding? Diversifying? He smiled, warm and calculated. I could bring you into my firm. Junior partner track. The salary would be substantial. I took the glass from him, but I did not drink. Why would you offer me that? I asked. Because you are family, he said smoothly. And because I respect how you handled the unpleasantness. You stood your ground. You protected Emily. That is what a real man does. I set the glass down without a word. I set the glass of scotch down, untouched. I appreciate the offer, I said, but no. Frank's smile tightened. Luke, be reasonable. This is an olive branch, a way for us to move forward. No, I said again. It is just another attempt to pull strings. You cannot buy me, Frank. And what you really cannot stand is that Emily loves me exactly as I am. The mask slipped off his face. Do not be a fool, he hissed. Everyone has a price. I stood up slowly. That is where you are wrong. And that is why you will never really know your own daughter. I walked back to the dining room, where Diane was flipping through photo albums with Emily. Look at these, Diane was saying. You were so happy living at home. Emily glanced up and met my eyes. She saw something in my face and stood up immediately. Mom, Dad, she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I have something to share. Everyone turned. We are having a baby, she said. Luke and I am 3 months pregnant. The shock on their faces was real. Diane recovered first, rushing to hug Emily, tears already brimming in her eyes. Frank approached more slowly, his eyes flicking between me and Emily. Congratulations, he said, voice stiff. Thank you, I said calmly. Then I leaned closer, my voice low so only he could hear. This child will never be a pawn in your games. I will make sure of that. His expression hardened, but he gave a single, short nod. He understood. On the drive home, Emily squeezed my hand. They will never really change, will they? She asked quietly. No, I said. But they will have to live with the fact that we have. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from Frank's lawyer. Inside was the deed to the house we had been renting, now ours, free and clear. Also included were legal documents setting up a trust fund for our unborn child. No note, no conditions, no strings, just clean, official transfers. It was not an apology, Frank was not capable of that, but it was something close to acknowledgement. Maybe the only way he could admit we had won. Emily gave birth that summer to a beautiful baby girl. We named her Eliza, after my grandmother. When Frank and Diane came to the hospital, they brought gifts. They cooed over Eliza, took a few photos, and left without trying to tell us how to raise our child. No lectures, no manipulation, just distance and respect. Over the next few months, the relationship settled into something almost normal. They stayed polite. They stayed in their lane. And though they never apologized, they also stopped trying to control Emily's life or undermine mine. One evening, while I was editing photos in my studio, Emily came in carrying Eliza. My mom called, she said. They want us to come for Christmas. I looked up from my computer. What do you want to do? She thought for a moment. I think we should go, she said. But on our terms. We stay at a hotel, not their house. We leave when we want. No unsupervised time with Eliza. I nodded. Sounds reasonable. She sat down beside me, bouncing Eliza gently on her knee. You know, she said, I used to think being successful meant making my parents proud, getting their approval, living up to their expectations. She looked at me, then down at Eliza, then back again. But now I realize success is making choices I can be proud of, standing by the people I love. 2 weeks before Christmas, a large envelope arrived from Frank. Inside was a glossy brochure, his company's annual report. The photographs throughout, landscapes, portraits, architecture, were all mine. The ones I had taken, on my own terms, without his involvement. Tucked inside was a short note. Hired the best photographer I know. Thought you would want a copy. It was not an apology. It was not even an olive branch. It was something simpler. Respect. Recognition. I did not call him to say thank you. We both understood. This was not about gratitude. It was about understanding the new lines drawn between us. That spring, I opened my own photography gallery in downtown Asheville. At the grand opening, Emily stood beside me with Eliza on her hip. My parents flew in from Oregon. Friends, clients, and strangers wandered the gallery, admiring my work, the life I had built. Frank and Diane came too. They stayed toward the end, low profile. Diane held Eliza briefly, under Emily's watchful eye. Frank shook my hand, glanced at the photographs with a small nod of approval, and left without offering any advice or opinions. As we locked up that night, Emily asked, "Do you think they have changed?" I thought about it carefully. "No," I said, "but they have accepted that they cannot change us. And sometimes that is enough." Later that night, sitting on the porch with Emily while Eliza slept upstairs, I realized something I had never been able to put into words before. I had not won by playing Frank and Diane's game. I had won by refusing to play it, by standing my ground, by protecting what mattered, by building my life on my own terms. Not through trickery or fighting or backroom deals, but through patience, through honesty, through stubborn, quiet persistence. In the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all, living a life full of love, peace, and pride, with the family I chose to fight for sitting right beside me.